It's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. Item number 1, confirmation of minutes. It's paper number CB bracket 2110/19 to 20. 19 to 20. Is the minutes of the meeting in 2019. It's been circulated amongst members. We've not received any proposal for amendment. I ask you to confirm the minutes. Thank you. Item 2, information paper issued since the last meeting. There is one. Please refer to the agenda issued earlier this month. Item number 3, date of next meeting and items for discussion. Please ask the administration to come in to join us. Well, for the list of outstanding items for discussion, the administration representatives are coming in. Let me introduce them. We have Dr. Yi, Undersecretary for Food and Health, Ms. Chelsea Wong, Principal Assistant Secretary for Food and Health, Dr. Samuel Yeung, Consultant Community Medicine Risk Assessment and Communication, Center for Food Safety, and Ms. Jenny Ma, Scientific Officer of the Center for Food Safety, as well as Dr. Yao Zhongping, Associate Professor, Department of Applied Biology and Chemical Technology of the Hong Kong Poly University. We're at the list of outstanding items for discussion. It's been sent to members, paper number CB bracket 2153/19 to 20 bracket 01 and 02. On the 4th of November, I myself and the Deputy Chair, together with the Secretary, had a meeting to discuss about our work plan for the legislative year 2019-20. The list of outstanding items has been updated. There has been some additions and deletion to reflect members' views reflected on the 18th of October. The date of the next meeting. It will take place on the 10th of December. It's a Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. The administration proposes 2 items. First is the rodent control work. It's item number 1 on the list. And 2, creation of a permanent post of Senior Principal Executive Officer in the Food Branch of the Food and Health Bureau to deal with the increasingly complex food safety policy issues and new initiatives. That's the second item on the list. Do we have a third item? Any suggestions? Well, there is none from members, but I'd like to say that we may be a bit cramped in terms of time to have all 3 discussions. If you agree, I'd like to have the third discussion matter moved to the next meeting. Well, if we can finish it all, then we will. We have half an hour spare time. So if you agree with the items for discussion in the December regular meeting, well, it will finish at 4:30. Item 4 is the guidelines on the use of deep frying oil for the trade. We have paper CB bracket 2153/19-20 bracket 04, which is the background brief. I ask the administration to take us through the paper before I invite members to ask questions. In the past few years, the government has been conducting legislative exercises in relation to food, including the regulation of metallic contaminations and harmful substance in edible fats and oil. We have been soliciting from the trade suggestions in relation to the use of deep frying oil. It will also cover when is the best time to replace the deep frying oil in use. We have engaged the PolyU Technology and Consultancy Company Limited to start a study. Well, they have conducted a study. They have also simulated reactions of the changes in the oil. They have also visited stakeholders. They have consulted chefs and deep frying oil users. We have completed the formulation of the guideline. We have had some promulgation sessions to present the guideline. As my opening remark, I would like to defer to Dr. Yao from the Poly University on the details of their study. Dr. Yao, please. Thank you. I would like to quickly present to you the process of our study. We started it in September 2017. The first step we did was that we have visited 32 food establishments. We have conducted surveys. We have had exchange sessions with the trade about the problems they encounter with the use and replacement of frying oil. We have also drawn reference from guidelines in the use of deep frying oil from other jurisdictions. Then we enter the experiment stage. Using the information and data collected, we have conducted chemical analysis. We found that the acid value and total polar compounds have been looked into. Based on the experiment result, we have drafted a guideline. We have asked the chefs, managers, operators of food premises to make comments on our draft. And we also take into account operability and acceptance of the trade. We have taken on board of their comments. We have amended the guideline and provided the finalized guideline to the Center for Food Safety. Let me quickly go through the guideline. We take into account the use of deep frying oil before, during, and after. We advise the trade to use a suitable frying oil. The suitable type is rapeseed oil. That is those with a higher content of monounsaturated fatty acid. They will have to remove moisture from the oil, and they have to use a proper frying batter, and the temperature should be maintained between 150 degrees and 180 degrees centigrade, because the higher the temperature, it will bring in a change of the content. The temperature of the oil should be lowered when it's idle. When it is not in use, the lid of the fryer should be put back on. In relation to the use of the oil. They ask if frying oil can be repeatedly used. Well, a number of factors may change the quality of the deep frying oil, so it is not feasible to give specific indicators. We propose a number of indicators to gauge the quality of the oil, say for example foaming, smoke point, color, odor. We believe that if the trade can abide by the guidelines, it will definitely improve the quality of deep fried food.
This item will run to 3:15, and we have 5 speakers, so 4 minutes each. Mr. Siwakajan. Thank you, Chairman. In paragraph 9 of the paper, they had put forward some guidelines and recommendations and when the oil should be changed. So I want to ask, do we include recent events? You are aware that we have a very poor atmosphere, and in 14th of August in Samsoipo riots, tear gas was shot, and the restaurants had to destroy the oil and the food. And there was also another incident where tear gas was shot, and both occasions the food and oil. Mr. Siwakajan, we are now talking about deep frying oil. My question is on the way. So this deep fried oil, the use of oil, will it include, the guidelines will it include pollution by tear gas and affecting the composition of the oil, and would the oil need to be discarded? Is this included in the guideline? The study report, the background was a few years ago, a couple of years ago, we had different legal guidelines and framework, and the industry wanted to ask for practical guidelines and recommendations, and we had recruited the PolyU, and the findings are applicable to the repeated use of deep frying oil. So that means you did not, when you commissioned PolyU, you didn't ask them to include tear gas and how and what effect tear gas would have on cooking oil. I know at the time it wasn't. So your answer is actually very simple. You can say no. That's not what you did. Your experiments didn't look into that. Well, Professor, will he have anything to add? Because when the study was conducted, we didn't have these social issues, and now we have these social issues. So from your professional perspective, if tear gas has been fired, does the oil need to be discarded? There are no such experiments. We didn't do these experiments. So you cannot answer whether the oil needs to be discarded. So the guidelines, even if we have new guidelines, on the 12th of November 2019, it's not able to give us a solution. That means if there was tear gas in the vicinity, should I change my oil? Well, they gave you an answer. Any other question? Ms. Helena Wong? Chairman, my question is these guidelines, they are not legally binding. If they don't comply, you cannot say that the oil is problematic unless you can prove there are contaminants or poisonous contaminants. So what if they don't comply? You recommend that if there are high TPCs, then the oil should be changed. let's say 27% or above. So will the government investigate how many restaurants are not complying where the TPC is higher than 27% and the oil is still being used? When you enforce these guidelines, do you have any legal basis? What can you do? Well, regarding the experiment background, the industry had wanted some guidelines on how they could and how long could they reuse the oil. So if you look at our study team, they made reference to overseas reused oil standards, and there are not too many jurisdictions that legislate on reused oil. On the other hand, they have a lot of practical guidelines to assist the industry. So first of all, a practical guideline is feasible, and second, you asked whether we can quantify TPCs. The TPC content is not necessarily relevant to food safety, it just reflects the quality of the oil. So if they make reference to local users, and if you repeat that in the laboratory. So the question, Chairman, is if we have high TPC levels exceeding 27%, it doesn't affect food safety, then why would the industry want to comply with your guideline? Is it it affects the food quality? Does it affect the food texture, the color? It's not a matter of food safety. I'd like to ask the PolyU professor, because it's not how long the oil is being used or how many times it's being used. So regardless of how much TPC, it doesn't affect the safety. Rather, it is the benzo A pyrene level that affects safety. So we look at BAP, and when we simulate the local restaurants, they have not exceeded our guidelines, and those are the results we observe. So there's no obvious health risk if we just look at our lab results. Can I follow up? I want to ask, according to your guideline, there are some fast check equipment to check the value of TPC, but we don't require the restaurants to check these levels. There's no consequence, and even if the test results are high and they don't change the oil, there's no one to look into that. The FEHG doesn't send staff to check. Well, our guidelines these are simple guidelines in their daily operations. So oil quality standards, aside from chemical composition, we can also observe the odor, the color, and so on. It would become the oil gets darker. These are the criteria that can be used, so you don't necessarily need to use a tester to. And we also mentioned that TPC is not necessarily related to food safety. So at this point, we don't need to legislate. Mr. Ho Jun-yin. Thank you, Chairman. Well, just now we heard about oil quality and whether the government can regulate. Now I understand these are simple guidelines, but they're very simple. So does that does that tell the public that the food industry, the catering industry, that they don't have sufficient knowledge regarding the use of frying oil? So when you promulgate the guidelines, what is the compliance? What follow-up measures does the government have to see whether there's any compliance, to see whether it is successful and whether we should legislate? Just now, Ms. Wong talked about food safety. We won't compromise on that. So in our food inspection regime, you do have regular inspections. They go to the restaurants, they order some items, especially deep fried items. Chairman, regarding the guidelines, I'd like to mention legislating food safety. We have done that in the past, and we will have some upcoming new legislation. So regarding frying oil and repeated use, how can the industry comply? Let me defer to Professor Yao. He does have a message to convey. Professor Yao? The industry compliance. Well, actually, when our guidelines were compiled, we did have some exchange with the industry. We had interviewed 40 plus establishments, different restaurants, large, medium, and small, Western and Chinese restaurants. We asked them whether they would comply and whether it was feasible. 80% felt that it could be adopted. The response was favorable. So before we issued the draft guidelines, only 20-30% of people felt it was useful, and now it's 80%. So they feel that the draft is very useful. The guidelines are useful. I asked, how far apart will you conduct assessment to assess the compliance and acceptance? How will you regulate food safety? And just now you said you will rely on inspections, you'll go to restaurants and order deep fried items. Will you step up these efforts to ensure that these measures are useful? The Secretary mentioned that there is a new piece of legislation. We are talking about a change in standards regarding oil that is being used. So we're concerned about food safety, whether it's safe to put into your mouth. Well, the professor mentioned he did studies that some items, benzo A pyrene, would not exceed certain levels. But we are concerned about the outcome. When will we have a review, and how do you ensure that the deep fried food is safe? You have to tell people whether you will step up inspections, or you have you should just tell them that it's safe, that you don't need to worry. It's as if the stuff is not safe. We don't want to be criticized for not regulating. Dr. Young? Dr. Yao? The background of the guidelines arose out of the industry. They wanted guidelines regarding oil quality and food quality, and that's why we commissioned PolyU to draft these guidelines. The PolyU team had involved the participation of the industry, and lastly, Professor also said 80% of the industry feels that it can help food quality and the oil quality. Now, Mr. Ho asked about inspections. The guidelines are targeted at the quality of reused oil. It's a guideline for the industry when they should change oil. Regarding safety, the Secretary also said under the heavy metal ordinance there is a regulation. Well, I understand what he's saying. You don't you he didn't answer your question. The simple question was, when will you review the restaurants? When do you have a timetable, a schedule, and whether you will legislate? So if you don't have a schedule, a timetable, just say so. Undersecretary, of course we can review how the industry is adopting these guidelines, whether it is useful. Of course we will devise convenient measures. We will have simple measures to determine the quality of reused oil. Ms. Yong Hoyan, we're talking about the guidelines for using deep frying oil. Now, the background, in contact with moisture and heat, there'll be chemical reactions.
喺呢個極性化合物，你話健康風險嗰方面呢，我覺得係咪會低估咗健康風險？我亦都見唔到任何有關於致癌嘅問題，即係究。
Have you underestimated the risk of health of TCP? I don't see anything about a carcinogen. Is it the case that you should give some information about this? In 2017 Consumer Council a report, they said they have taken samples from about a number of cooking oils. It says that the impact may affect the male reproductive system. There are a number of carcinogens. So is it the case that you have underestimated the health risk? You also talk about the TCP, total polar compound indicators. Is it sufficient to just measure these indicators to gauge the health risk of the use of the cooking of the deep frying oil? Where is the dangerous level? Thank you. On food safety at different levels, say for example, importation of the edible oil or import of fresh oil. In relation to contaminants, say for example, heavy metal, we will first deal with it by way of legislation. We have yet to complete the process. Regarding reuse of deep frying oil, we refer to the experiment conducted by the PolyU. They have also taken into account the reference values of overseas jurisdictions. The chemicals generated from repeating use of deep frying oil may not have anything to do with health risk. Will the Center for Food Safety will continue to deal with contaminants and heavy metal? The guideline for deep frying oil is an operable guideline for the trade to follow. Have you underestimated the health risk? Is it carcinogenic, or is it the case that you deliberately leave it out? Thank you. Ms. Yung mentioned about TCP. It's a quality that is a is a quality of the substance. This experiment conducted by the poly-U is that repeated use will not increase TCP significantly, so there is little impact on health. So does it have anything to do with health risk then? What we try to do with the guideline is to help the trade in the use of deep frying oil and its repeated use to improve quality. Will it be more carcinogenic if there is a repeated use? There may be some harmful substance from edible oil. We will consult the public under the harmful substances in food regulation. You mentioned about the benzoapyrene. According to the experiment of the poly-U, this substance does not increase with repeated use of the oil. Just now, a member asked very clearly, the reason why you asked for the experiment to be conducted is people would like to know more about deep frying oil used in food establishments. Some people say that, some deep frying oil has been used forever, but that is actually no such thing. If the deep frying oil is kept at temperature or keep increasing the temperature, will it have any impact on health? Another thing is, after use, they turn the temperature off. And the temperature drops, and then when they use it again, they turn the temperature high to 150 degrees or 180 degrees. Should the trade stop using the deep frying oil after a certain number of times? My understanding is that the food establishment just use it once. Well, after using it for deep frying oil, they would just use it for, say, filling or for frying. I believe that it's rare that they will repeatedly use deep frying oil. Well, there is. I have a company that collects used oil. Well, the sulfide level of the oil collected is much higher, many times higher than in the past. I see. It looks like that you have not addressed this issue. An increased level of sulfur. How is it going to affect health? Well, we have to remove that the substance, so we have to do more experiment, which in turn increase our cost. What are the reasons that the sulfide level has increased significantly compared to the past? It has increased by several folds. Is it because of the mode of operation of food establishment is different, or is it because of the quality of the oil? Well, you haven't done any experiment on this. Perhaps in the second round you will do a similar one. Mr. Stephen will ask you when you do the next experiment. I would like to ask you the same thing again as well. Let me answer the second part of the question about sulfur. There are many sources. There may be a sulfur residue left in the oil after certain food substance has been used. NOFAC's guidelines and standards, they have not included sulfur in there in the list, so you don't have to worry about that. As to how long that it can be repeatedly used, I would like to defer to my colleagues too. Well, they can only express it in terms of principle, but not a specific number. Dr. Yao. According to the findings of our experiment, as well as the research we've done, if the temperature is too high, if there is a frequent change of temperature, then the degradation of the oil will be more rapidly. So keeping the temperature steady is better. About sulfur, I would like to add that you have asked a similar question last year. We asked our students to do something of it. Well, we will mimic different types of oil. We found different levels of sulfur. It is very difficult to use it as an indicator to gauge the quality. Well, if you've done some experiments, did you find that if you find that frequent change of temperature may have an impact of the quality, then would you say in the guideline that keeping the temperature steady is better? Or would you say in the guideline that perhaps you should not use it more than once, twice, or 3 times? It is not the law. Would you remind them to not use it for more than a certain number of times? Yes, it's in the guideline. Temperature should be kept between 150 and 180 degrees centigrade. Well, when idle, it should be lower to between 120 to 130 degrees. Prolonged periods of heating or frequent change of temperature will increase the degradation of the oil. That's in the guideline. Secretary. Well, I will, of course, help you promote it. Chefs and management should understand. The boss may not like it, but management will have to submit figures of gross profit. If they discard the oil after just one use, it may have an impact on the gross profit. Say, for example, well, if there is a frequent change of temperature, don't use it more than 2 times. If there are no other questions, that will be the end of this item. Well, our time is up. I see that you want to speak, you want to have a second round. I just to have some clarification from the administration. Just now you said that the sulfur level of deep frying oil will not cause food concern. I'd like you to clarify, because I don't think that is true. Please clarify. Well, I wasn't talking about the same thing. I was just saying that, well, sulfur may be the result of many food substance. We have drawn reference from overseas practice and their standards, but they have not included sulfur as one of the indicators that would affect the degradation of oil, and they have not used it as one of the indicators that would cause food concern or health risk. But we will continue to monitor the situation. I understand that is not the case. Even on the mainland, well, what they have imposed a limit on sulfur on food or additives. Well, you may disagree. You have already said that you disagree. Let's end this item. Thank you for attending.
Agenda item number 5. That is the proposed construction of animal management and animal welfare building complex in Kai Tak development. We have the Undersecretary, Mr. Amor Wong, Dr. Kenny Ho, Dr. Mary Chow, Mr. Edward Jie from Architectural Services Department, Mr. Nevin Lam from ASD, Senior Project Manager. So before I invite the Undersecretary, I need to remind everybody that this is a PWP funding recommendation, so we have conflict of interest rules 83A, ROP. So members who have direct or indirect pecuniary interests, they cannot put forward any motion or amendment motion and speak on those issues unless they disclose the nature of their interest. So I have to remind members, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest with the matters in front of you, you should declare such nature of such interest before you speak. So, Undersecretary, could you take us through the paper? The AFCD, they have 4 animal management centers that date back to the 1960s. They are obsolete and inadequate. In the original site, there is a plan for urban redevelopment. We can build 600 public housing units on the site, and we want to build an animal management and animal welfare building in Kai Tak. It will be 15 stories high. So aside from relocating the old center, we can have a lab, we can have the Veterinary Services Board office space relocated. So this new complex building, it will provide more than double the facilities, and they will also have canine quarters, a multi-purpose facilities, and there will also be new animal management facilities, and there will also be some education facilities regarding animal welfare. And the item has been sent to the Kowloon City District Council for discussion, and it has received their support. The next step, we will seek funding from FC, and hopefully we can start works in the second quarter next year. That would conclude my report. Let me remind colleagues, this is an animal welfare building, not a discussion on animal welfare. Well, Chairman, I think it's very hard for you to separate animal welfare and the and a building complex. How come they not be related? So I want to ask, the original site will be used for public housing, so they want to liberate the site in Tokwawan Matawai. I have no objection. You've also identified a new site for the building complex. You also want to expand the facilities. That is reasonable. I just want to ask, in point 6, in paragraph 6, you say that after expanding the site, you want to be able to save more stray animals or abandoned animals, and if necessary, you can extend the housing period of these animals so they have a better chance of being adopted. So haven't you made a pledge that when you build this new complex, you'll have clear guidelines on how to extend the animal's stay to enhance the chances of being adopted? Will you have a set of measures now, or do you need to wait until the complex is built? I think you need to have a plan right now to encourage people to adopt rather than buying a pet from a pet store. So could you clarify the policy? I'm afraid that once you build the complex, you won't live up to your pledge. We want to see less strays and less putting down of animals. Well, thank you for the question. The hardware expansion is a prerequisite. We need space to, and Dr. Ho can give us the details. Thank you, Chairman. We want to reduce the putting down of animals, and we want more animals to be adopted. And given the restrictions of our old facilities, the animals that we can accommodate are very few. So if we have a new complex, we will have more than double the capacity. So aside from education, we also have management, animal management. We can do more work regarding adoption. We can conduct courses, seminars, teaching people how to treat animals, how to adopt animals. We can do more work along those lines. Well, the stray cats and dogs that are collected, how long will they be kept before they are put down? Is it 4 days? Dr. Ho? For dogs with chips, we will try to identify the owner, and typically the animals stay 10-20 days. The 4-day stay is for animals who are not adopted and we cannot identify the owner. They will stay not less than 4 days. Our current policy is depending on the state, its temperament, and its health. The vet, if it can ascertain that the animal is of a good temper, it's healthy. So in the future, will you extend the stay for animals without chips? They allow them to stay longer. Could you extend it more than the existing 4 days? Well, whether it has good temperament, well, they are caught and they don't become mild overnight. So now we are building this complex. Will you give these animals more time to be adopted? That is exactly the point. The 4 day is a legal requirement. Actually, typically, it will be not less than 4 days. And if we have the facilities, we have considered the animals are in a strange environment. So if we keep them longer and if we have more interaction with the animal, more space for them to exercise. So we believe through these improvements and management, the temperament can change and enhance the chance for adoption. It's already been more than 5 minutes. You have, I'm sorry, Mr. Siu Gachun. The whole building complex, why doesn't it have vet services? Because when the public take their pets, they have to go to private establishments. It's very expensive and there's no regulation. In 2017, there was a consultant study and they had interviewed 220 pet owners, and more than 50% feel that the fees are unreasonable. So we only have CityU providing specialty, providing emergency services. So the public has to rely on private services. So why is that the case? Why can't we increase more local vets? Could you consider the CityU, the Animal Welfare Center, where they have a 3-story facility, so we can have a government-owned facility? Will you consider that? I'd like Dr. Ho to respond. Thank you, Chairman. The government does not have a plan to operate government vet hospitals because we see we have a sufficient number of private clinics. We also have animal welfare organizations that provide animal health care. The rationale is the VSB did a 2017 survey where they had 220 pet owners who had visited a vet. They felt that the fees were unreasonable. I know that they have clinics. There are some 140 of them, but we don't have government vet services. And having a pet shouldn't be the reserve of the wealthy. This is a policy issue. Do you have an answer for that? We don't have such a policy. So you don't want to compete with the private sector. I did not instruct him how to answer. He does not need my instruction. I am just asking a question. I repeat, there is no such policy. Could you ask on my behalf why isn't there such a policy when the survey said that fees are unreasonable and we still don't have a policy? Thank you for your question. We will examine this issue. So after you've looked into it, you can have a discussion with us and give us your reasoning. Okay, next. Mr. Tan Ji-xun. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, the government is not competing with the private sector. The government hospitals are not competing with private clinics. On the last occasion, we asked, what if when the pets inhale tear gas? Well, of course we know that they have to go to the vet, but the vets are expensive. Now, even the vets, they have mobile centers to treat cats and dogs. Well, the government doesn't have these services. So we're asking, could you provide some cheap or emergency services where, let's say, they got shot by tear gas? You can sponsor the NGOs or even private clinics. Otherwise, there's no animal welfare. it's just lip service. So coming back to the building complex in paragraph 5, it says the KTD has. I'm sorry, Mr. Chan. Do you support the building of this complex? Okay, thank you. It has a heavy workload, and they quoted some complaint figures to indicate the workload, and it it handles 45% of the total complaint cases in the 4 animal management welfare centers. So these complaints, what could you give us a breakdown, classification, and then we have temporary quarters going up from 120 to 170. We had mentioned that before. When you have more space, can the animals spend more time there for adoption and so on? In the past, we had animal concern groups saying that the AFCD environment is poor and they're not very humane to animals. They can get sick easily and so on. But so in the new complex building, aside from enhancing facilities, do you have any management improvement? And in the past,
These animal management centers refuse visits from outsiders. I think that legislators try to go to the one in Shengshui and we refused entry. Well, for the new center, will you enhance transparency? You said that you would consider about duty on owners. Well, if you're going to legislate for it, that means prospective owners will be very careful before they make a decision to own a pet. And as a result, the number of animals put up for adoption may be increased. You're going to increase the number to 270. Is it because you have taken into account possible increase in cases of abandonment? We need to have proper facilities to improve management. In the new complex, there will be more management by category. Say, for example, different age of the animals. We would like to have more facilities for vets to operate and to conduct tests so that animal health will improve and the animals that stay with us will have a better chance to be adopted. Visitors. We have earmarked facilities in the new complex to keep animals that are awaiting to be adopted or to be taken by animal welfare group. We'll talk to these groups. We may also make arrangements for prospective adopters to come to visit us. We may also inject some educational elements. So yes, there will be areas where visitors can come. You ask if we foresee an increase in number of abandonment. The Kowloon Center will not be there anymore. This complex, in a way, is the reprovisioning of the Kowloon complex. Do you support this proposal or not? Well, I can't really not support. Then do you or not? You do, right? Dr. Elizabeth Kwok. We need more of these facilities. Of course, we can't not support it. So the question is whether it is sufficient, because they have got land, which is not easy. And this piece of land will be for a new animal management and animal welfare building. There are different stories, but they don't house too many animals. Just about 100% more than the previous number. Can you tell us how many more animals, abandoned animals, can be housed in this complex? They may be abandoned, they may be hurt, they may be animals awaiting treatment. Can you give us more information? We will be disappointed if you can only house a small number of animals. Can you make more room to house more animals? Well, if the animal is not adopted within that short time, it may not be able to survive. NGOs try to make space to keep animals, but it's difficult. It's difficult to find land. It's difficult to make sure that they won't create any noises, and they have to conform. They have to comply with all the rules and regulations. The government doesn't help NGOs to find premises for that purpose. And this new complex does not house too many animals. That means the problem is still there. Why don't they make it bigger or create more land? Dr. Ho, thank you. Let me explain about the different functions and the number of animals that can be housed. This complex is also for cats and dogs that are imported and undergoing quarantine. We have 10 such facilities. For dogs, it will be increased to 12. For cats, quarantine facilities, it will be increased from 6 to 20. For stray dogs and stray cats, there will be increase in number as well. We have earmarked facilities in the complex for small animals, say for example hamster, rabbits. So together with small animals, there are 30 places. So it's more than 100%, but it's still 270. There are a total of 270. For adoption, 80 of them are for animals waiting adoption. We would like to make good use of the 80 places. We will work with animal groups, but it's still too few. How can you change the design to create more places? With more places, that means more animals can stay alive. Dr. Ho, our aim is not to house animals in the complex long term, because that is not good for their welfare. We hope to find them a new home as soon as possible. That is the ultimate aim. Of course, we hope that animals will be adopted as soon as possible, but without a place to house them in the meantime, then they won't get a chance to be adopted. They have answered that it's not the case that they have no spaces, but because of the law. It's not because of a lack of space that they have to put animals down, but you may continue to ask questions. But if you think that the problem lies with the law, then we need to change the law. Dr. Ho, when I refer to legislation, it's, it cannot be less than 4 days. If the animal is suitable for adoption, we will leave it there. We have earmarked funds to subsidize animal groups to promote animal adoption, and we provide free neuter service for cats and dogs for adoption. I won't allow you to ask more questions, Miss Ann Chang. I would like to ask about the total floor area. It says that it's going to be about 24,000 square foot. But what is the total construction area? Mr. Tse. We have a plot ratio of 8. We try to make use of the plot ratio of 8. It's about 2,344 square meters. We use 8 times, so it's about 20,000 square meters. So 200,000 square feet, yeah, something like that. Just now, members expressed concern about this. It's a very good site. It's a prime site. The site is given to you. It's a prime site in the urban area. How can you make good use of this site to provide better service for animals? Well, you use it as an animal management center, mainly for stray cats and dogs. There are only few stray cats and dogs in urban areas. They're mostly in the New Territories. In Shek Wu Hoi, we have actually been to that center. We understand that there are a lot of vacant places. Last time we went there, we could see just a few occupied places for dogs. 90% of it was vacant. If you say that you will continue to use it to house stray cats and dogs, then you don't need to use the space here. Keep them in Changshui. Can you use the space for more services for pet owners? I see that there is a quarantine center, 2 of them. That's it. And there is a larger waiting area. I don't know how much larger it is and who will be waiting there. And 6 multi-purpose rooms. And what is it used for? Can you provide clinic service for people living in urban areas? And there is also inoculation. Do you have service for neutering? I understand that there are AFCD vehicles going everywhere to provide neuter service at a very reasonable charge, but no such service in the urban area. Should you include this service? Because we now advocate reducing the reproduction of dogs. Well, there should be a public service providing clinical service to pet owners. Pet owners love their pets, but they don't have money to take them to clinics. I declare interest. I have a dog, and there was a growth, and the vet said that there needs to be a surgery, $40,000. And I sought second opinion, and the second opinion said that, well, it's not a growth, it's not you just give the dog more omega-3, and now my dog doesn't need the surgery. So would you provide consultation service for pet owners? Sorry, you don't have to be, because the question has already been asked whether there will be outpatient service. They said no. You have used up all your time. I'll ask the administration to answer you on paper, because this item stops at 1:45. Next, Mr. Shoka-fai. I'd like to ask the administration. This is about the Animal Management Center in Kowloon. It will be reprovisioned. The old site is 1,130 square meters. The new site is 2,344 square meters, with a plot ratio of 8.
So what was the old plot site area? ASD, Mr. Chair. The old building has 2 buildings. That's 2 stories high, and the other one is 1 story. I'm not sure if anybody could supplement. So how many square meters do we have? How large is the area? Mr. Chair? Don't know. You can respond later then. Ms. Chow? The old center, 127. 1,227 square meters. The total area is only 1,200 square meters. Well, so that means the new center is 20 times as large. It's not, the new complex building is not just the Kowloon Animal Center. We have other departments using the space. We have other, not FEHD, it's AFCD, other departments, divisions moving over. So the new premises, how much would be set aside for animal welfare? So you are moving to the Kowloon Center. You will be including a lot of other departments. So I just want to know what the comparison. It's a difference of 3,000 square meters. There's an increase of 3,000 plus square meters. So that means how many times larger are we talking? It's about 3 times larger. So for the old premises, the cats and dogs waiting for adoption, how many cages did we have? Is it also 3 times larger? Ms. Chow? We have different rates of increase for different animal services. The old facilities were inadequate and smaller. So we have increased the kennel sizes, and the increase is not in proportion. So how many kennels do we have for the cats and dogs? We had 120 in the old premises. $270, so double, more than double. So 120 to 270. And we also heard that the size has increased 3 times. So when you relocate to the new premises, the kennels, there is increase in kennels, and we also have space to deal with other facilities. It's going to be 15. The new premises are 15 stories high, and we also have equine disease division. What do you mean by equine disease management? It's a laboratory we have a large facility in Seongseo, and it's inadequate. So in the new complex building, the new laboratory, we will expand a little bit for equine disease. Are those related to the jockey club horses? Yes, because when we have import-export and quarantine, they need to be checked for a disease. We need to send them overseas before they can get a test result. So this equine facility, testing facility, it's also an increase in technical services. So Liberal Party, are they supporting that? Yes. Well, this equine is actually redundant because the jockey club can deal with it. I don't think anybody else aside from jockey club will be catering to horses. Well, you say you want to build a laboratory, but then you have other services. I think that's a waste of time. Mr. Eddie Chu, our scheduled time was 3:45, and I drew the line. Do you need 5 minutes? Okay, try to ask as quick as possible. I have 2 questions. We see the putting down of cats and dogs is going down, and the Kowloon Center, you are increasing the number of kennels. So is that equivalent to saying after it is built, we can see the number of animals put to sleep will continue to go down? That's the first question. The second, I understand the government, the Development Bureau, has $1 billion earmarked for unused government land or abandoned schools. So animal groups would like to use that space for animal shelters. So can you entertain more requests, and can you put up more animals for adoption? Dr. Ho? Well, the first question, we want to reduce the number of animals put to sleep. We will do our best. So when we enhance our facilities, I'm asking, is it relevant to if we have more space, more facilities? I just want to see if there's a correlation. He mentioned there's more space, they will encourage adoption. He did not admit that there was inadequate space and they would speed up the putting of animals to sleep. He didn't say so. You cannot squeeze an answer out of them. He spent 40 minutes answering that, Mr. Dr. Ho, regarding the land resumption, and did we have organizations applying for the $1 billion? I know there are 2 animal welfare groups. They are doing this, making this application. I don't have figures on that. I don't have the design. So you can supplement. I just want to. We had a discussion and we need to state our position. As Chairman said, it's not effective. We need more information, and even after this meeting, you need to meet with us. We need more So just now, Dr. Elizabeth Quat says that she support. You have reservations. Okay, that's it. We've overrun. So aside from DAB that has a reservation, all the other members support, including Liberal Party and the Democratic Party. So we'll end this item and we move on to the next agenda item. The officials, aside from Dr. Choi, we also have some doctors entering. We have Undersecretary, and agenda item number 6 is the latest progress on work in response to African swine fever. The Secretary has given us a background paper, CB2 153/1920 bracket 08. Miss Helena Wong on 3rd of October had also issued a letter, and there is a response to follow-up work outbreaks of African swine fever, and we have this paper in front of us. Undersecretary, we had overrun by 10 minutes just now, and we have 10 minutes less to deal with this. Regarding ASF, starting from August last year, we had the first outbreak in mainland. We are aware that Hong Kong in May this year, we also had 2 cases. So after those outbreak cases, we had an overall plan to maintain the supply of live pigs, but we had an outbreak in May anyway, and we have some new measures, and according to local and overseas experts, we have devised a plan. That is, when all live pigs arrive in the slaughterhouse, they have to be slaughtered in 24 hours. So that is very effective in the spreading of the swine fever. After September, there was a 3rd outbreak, and after a review, we felt that we don't need to cull the animals in a large number, and we can still control the situation. That would conclude the report. So thank you for your brief introduction, Mr. Siogafa. Thank you, Chairman. ASF, I repeat, if you consume pigs with ASF, what happens to the human? Not even a sneeze. So why are people so worried? Because assuming the sick pigs, if it becomes a pork chop or other forms of food, and if it's consumed by pigs, then it's a problematic, but it doesn't affect humans. So first of all, the Hong Kong public don't need to worry. But no matter what, we need to keep an eye on development. The government has been working with the industry to prevent the situation going out of hand. So even though you've done a good job, but I can tell you that we now have less import of pigs, and prices have gone up 3 times. In the past, we would have 4,000 pigs imported, and now the quantity has gone down by some 60+%. We have only 1,000 pigs. So what measures do you have to urge the mainland authorities to increase the supply, to stabilize prices, and allow the public to purchase at a reasonable price? Thank you, Chairman. Regarding ASF and pig supply, I'm aware that it's a matter of concern because the indirect effect is a drop in supply and increase in price in the past. We have maintained close contact with mainland authorities. We know there was an outbreak in China from August last year till now, so that has affected our supply. We also see that the market adapts. There's less live pigs and we have more frozen meat, and the public change their habits, but we will continue to liaise with mainland counterparts.
The secretary said that there is a drop in number of live pigs, but for chilled pork there is an increase, so it balances out. Is that the case in the future? We won't consume any live chicken, live pigs, or we only have chilled chicken and chilled pork. But some people would like to have a choice. They would prefer live chicken or live pigs. Well, it's been many years since you have been working on it. Still, there is no result. A lot of people are doing something. Well, the number was 4,000 and it's now dropped to 1,000 pigs or so. So that means some people would have lost their job somewhere along the line. So what are you going to do to help them? You said you would negotiate with counterparts on the mainland, but what are the results? If it's going to continue, that means we won't be able to consume mainland chickens anymore. I'm not saying that local ones are not as good, but there is a difference in price. You need to give consumers choices. You are the Bureau. You should take the lead to do something. Otherwise, nothing will be done. As we've said, we would continue to let mainland authorities know that we need supply of live pigs. Mainland authorities have put in place medium and long-term measures to let the supply level go back to normal. Well, people have been affected by the drop in supply, but there has been a number of relief measures, say for example waiver of half a year rent in market stores, various permits being waived for 1 year, say for example market operator permits and operation of pigsty. But they are something to do with the extradition bill. Why did you link it with African swine fever? Miss Elizabeth Kwok. This problem has been plaguing Hong Kong for a very long time, and consumers will have to pay more for pork, but market stores are suffering as well. Practitioners told us that, first, the purchase price is high, and even if you have money, you may not be able to get any. After the store owners have procured the pork, they will have to sell at a high price to consumers. And consumers may not like it, or they only have enough supply to last them for half a day. You may have some relief measures. But for these pork operators, they are subject to multiple impacts. Shouldn't you offer more? Say, for example, for pork stores, that should be a complete waiver of rent. They don't know when supply will resume steady. For a market that may be 4 or more pork stores, they will not be able to continue. What are you going to do to help them? I don't see any way to increase supply as a solution. So what are you going to do? What about supply? Will you be able to stabilize price levels? How can you ensure that people can buy pork at an affordable price? for all wet markets, including Hong Kong, are making a lot more money because of social unrest, save and except pork stores. So pork store operators are suffering, whereas others are making more money than before. This is a difficult issue because on the mainland, they have to deal with the African swine fever. They also have to put in place measures to help the trade to get back on its feet. Practitioners encounter difficulties as well. That's why the government has launched short-term relief measures, economic ones, to help them tide over the difficult times. We'll continue to monitor the situation. Shouldn't you actively look into offering rent waivers for pork stores because you have not addressed this issue? You only talk about studying or looking into it. By the time you finish, people have been laid off. We will go back to think about it. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Ho. I'd like to follow up on what Ms. Kwok raised. Our country can foresee that this is a long battle. They offer half rent for the entire public market, all the stores, not just certain stores. So it is a measure to reduce rent. Given the economic downturn, there is no targeted measure for pork stores. I'm not as optimistic as the chairperson. Well, the impact is not as much for other stores. Then you haven't been to wet markets that often. But people have bought less seafood. Well, yes, that's it is case for chicken as well. So it's doom and gloom for pork stores, and the situation will not improve for the better in the short run. Rent waiver for half a year is just a short-term measure. Why don't you extend the rent waiver period for a longer term? Why don't you have a provisional motion? I will support you. You can say until that the supply returns to 4,000. Well, I don't want you to have to ring the bell because there are only loyalists here. But you need to do more. You need to have a medium and long-term management plans. With reduced supply, you can first of all ask for an increase of supply to say 2,000 or 3,000. The second way is to import overseas pigs. Well, the government said there may be quarantine problems, but have you at least talked to the AFCD to try to find a way? Well, if you allow overseas pigs being imported, it will be good. And what about local pigs? Do you know that at its peak, how many pigs are delivered locally from local farms? 700. We can't sustain this level of supply for beyond a few days, but that's a backup plan that is complements the mainland pigs. Mr. Shukafai mentioned about chicken. Well, for chicken farm, they receive a subsidy, but in Hong Kong, they don't. Of course, with the subsidy, mainland supply is cheaper. Hong Kong operators will have to ask for a higher price because, or they have to sacrifice quality for the low price. Local farms cannot easily move their farm, and they have limited space. People have a misconception that pigsty next to you is not a good thing because of odor. But that problem can be addressed. You have been speaking for more than 4 minutes. I ask them to give you a written reply because I can't give them time for the answer. Well, what about a second round, even for just 1 minute? Miss Rebecca Chan. Starting from May this year, mainland supply has been dropping. It has dropped significantly. I don't know if you know what is meant by people in a plight. The secretary said that, well, hopefully the behavior will change for consumers to have chilled pig. I may be a legislator, but I still go to public market. Well, can you imagine talking to a housewife just to ask them to use chilled pig bone to make soup? They would give you a piece of their mind, surely. And in 2 weeks' time, the pork operator might have disappeared. Well, you offer the rent waiver to vegetable stores and other stores. You can't find a solution for the problem, but you don't offer any targeted measures to help them. I think you couldn't care less. We have seen record high prices on a retail and wholesale level, and they continue to climb every year. I would like to ask, how many local pig farms have problems? How many of them are problem-free? Well, for farms that have encountered the African swine fever problem, it won't last forever. But how many of them are on the list for the operation to resume? How many pigs will be delivered to Hong Kong in the coming 3 months? I want to know first the number of pigs supplied from the mainland. Is it going to continue to drop too with soaring prices of pork? Will there be other subsidy programs in a pipeline? Can you at least tell us when you'll be able to come up with a proposal, 1 or 2 months? I'll defer to Dr. Ho. Is the Custom and Excise Department that compiles the list of farms that supply pigs to Hong Kong. They take into account a number of factors, say for example their capability, the names on the list changes. Back in 2018 there are about 180 farms, and the latest information 123 on the list. There are about 30 farms that are actually supplying pigs to Hong Kong. Yes, the number has been dropping. As the secretary said, the main reason was that, well, the situation of the epidemic is still acute. There is shortage of supply on the mainland. That's why the number of pigs supplied to Hong Kong has been dropping. We will continue to talk to the General Administration of Customs on the mainland as to whether there will be arrangements to inspect mainland farms. Well, our cooperation with the mainland is to establish a supply structure. We have to be confident that they will, the mainland authorities will continue to conduct inspections. It's just like other places. We have to first establish a system for food import. Please, in short, you can say no. I don't have time. Just confirmation of the number. That is from 2018, from 180 to 30. No, not that 30 of them are left. 30 of them are still supplying. In 2018, there were 180 farms, and the latest list is 123, but only 30 of them actually supply pigs to Hong Kong. Mr. Wilson Orr, I think the deputy, the undersecretary is quite something. I don't know whether he lives in a different place. He said that first, chilled pork should be a solution. I've asked a question for an oral answer about 2 weeks ago. It was scheduled in May, but I could only ask the question in October because of the many things that happened in Let's Go.
It was reported by the media, and I want to say that to purchase pork, it's very expensive. I also do shopping. If you want to make soup stock, it would cost more than $100. It's ridiculous. So could Undersecretary tell me, does the Bureau have any measure, and what is your planning? For example, can you increase the supply? Just now we heard that we have to rely on mainland. Well, have you considered other countries? Can we import from other countries? And locally, is there any plan for them to have a stable supply? That is, we don't want the supply chain to break. And just now, you said the government has a series of remedial measures, but the link REIT, they have no measures to relieve pressure, and I'll reserve some time for you to answer. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, maintaining or increasing live pig supply. The mainland is one source. In our existing law, local pigs, there's a quota of 74,000 heads, but they're only using some 61,000. There's still room for them to grow, rear more pigs. And of course, we welcome other channels. So if the industry wants to import from other countries, we are willing to explore with them. Regarding short-term measures, we've just announced the measures. We will keep an eye on development to see whether we need to review. We will follow up on that. Well, I hope that the Undersecretary can live up to his pledge, because you have not been able to bring prices down, and the the meat stalls are not able to handle these challenges. You need to give them more support. Undersecretary, thank you for your views. Mr. Vincent Chen. I'm not an ASF expert, and I don't do a lot of shopping, but I've heard the Samsui Kaifeng say that social unrest has kept them at home, but they still need to do shopping, and pork prices are expensive, and pork is also a main staple. So I have a suggestion. Could the government consider waiving rent for meat stalls, extend the rent relief? this is my suggestion that we need to share the pain. Yes, we do take note of the market difficulties. There are many challenges. So we said that there are some relief measures that have been announced. We'll keep an eye and monitor our development. The market rent and license fees, I had been negotiating with the finance secretary. Of course, you have done your part, but please don't interrupt. So what is we have so many people raising this issue. This is a consensus amongst the public. They would like to see some rent relief. So are there any concerns that would prevent you from doing that? Undersecretary? Since the relief measures have been announced and we've heard the relevant bureau and secretary have announced more than one relief measure, they will continue to monitor the situation and see what can be done more. Okay, I have 4 minutes. So it's very simple. I'd like to set a date with you. I'll wear shorts and an apron. We don't need FEHD to accompany you. I will ensure your safety, and I can tell you live pig and frozen pig are very different. So we talked about soup stock. I can tell you from a professional perspective, twice the amount of frozen pork cannot give you the flavor of live pig. So I can even give you samples of live pig and barbecue pork, and you can definitely tell the difference. So you should not repeat York Chow's comments that he can't tell the difference between live and frozen poultry. We can tell the difference with the naked eye alone. We don't even need to taste. So Wong Yong-gan and myself, we can differentiate between live and frozen poultry. So since York Chow, we have no live chicken, duck, goose, and then Dr. KWOK Ka-ki, he didn't import live poultry, and now we don't have live crab and no live pig, so I can record this in our history books. So the CFS, they are always taking the moral high ground and say that they have to take care of our health. So you say there are problems with the pig farms, but they all say that they have no problems, and when the pigs when they cross the border, there's no problem. They only get sick when they get to the slaughterhouse. So Ho Zhen-yi does not recall that. He's too young. In the 60s, the mainland, they didn't have a live pigs supply, and they supplied Hong Kong. When they were starving, they supplied Hong Kong. And today, you're saying they're expensive and they're not supplying Hong Kong. And I've repeated this many times. They've been a monopoly, so the importers are not making a loss. So even with a third of the supply, Mr. Shiokafe said they are selling 3 times the price. They are working less and making just as much money. And you don't want to bust that monopoly. So you should take the example of poultry. The buyers can go to the farms and purchase independently. They don't need to rely on the oligarchy. And the government needs to be more humble. You should not pretend that you're the professional. The market is so large, they don't have to cater to you only. In the past, they would have to take pity on you. And now you're all arrogant. You say that we can import frozen chicken or frozen pig. Well, you need to fix things. You're lucky. We don't have temporary emotions. We don't. So I've repeated on numerous occasions, you don't need to respond. Our poultry farms, our pig farms, there's no problem with them. They can increase the livestock, but you refuse to budge. What are you afraid of? You're afraid it's not large enough? The poultry farm is not safe? You need to adapt to the times. You need to be humble. You need to meet with Chinese officials, communicate more. And you should not blame them for having African swine fever. They have 10,000 pigs, and in order to sell you 100 pigs, they have to cull their herd. Well, we have to thank them for supplying. And if you have complaints, you can do it after the meeting. It was called 3 Express. I wasn't born, but I'm aware of it. So if we don't have AOB, we'll conclude this item. Item number 7, AOB. We don't have AOB. Meeting adjourned.